My name is Celestina. I'm an astrologer, and I'm going to be talking to you about the moon nodes in an astrological chart. The first concept that I'd like to convey is that the moon nodes are not celestial bodies. They're not planets, they're not fixed stars, they're not asteroids. They're calculated points. It would be difficult for me to articulate and explain how those points are calculated. Astrologers don't really do that anymore. We rely on software for that generally. And it's not important for the work that we are doing with the nodes, at least that I do with the nodes, to understand how the points are calculated. But it is important to understand that these are not celestial bodies. So the way that I was trained, and it has always stood me in good stead, is that because they're not celestial bodies, because they're not actual physical things, it doesn't make any sense really to talk about transits to them, or what they're conjunct, or quincunx, or trine. They can't be part of a grand trine or a kite, for example. That's just not meaningful in the same way. One exception, I would say, is that if a node fell on one of the degrees of the fixed stars or inside the Via Combusta, I would take that pretty seriously. But otherwise, I think it's enough to just know what the nodes are, to know their sign, and to know their houses. I think those are the basic building blocks that you need for your karmic work, and I think that's plenty to know. So these calculated points come in pairs. The south node and the north node are always opposite. They're going to be opposite by sign, and they're going to be opposite by house placement. And by knowing the sign in the house, you can get some information about your karmic direction in this lifetime that would be very helpful to you, and I will talk a little bit about that. So just with your birth date, just by knowing the day that you were born or that someone is born, you can get the moon node sign. So you can find using the charts on my website, using any charts lots of charts available on the internet. By casting a chart, you can find out what the signs are. And the north and the south nodes are going to be opposite. If you want to know the house placement of the sign of the node, then you need to know the time and the place of birth. So the date, the time, and the place of birth. Because the chart is a reflection of what was going on in the sky at that time from that perspective. And you'll place the rising sign is what's on the cusp of the first house. There will be 12 houses, and the signs and the nodes will be dispersed throughout those houses. And so you need to know the time and the place for that. And again, you can get a free chart, lots of places online to figure that out. I think that a lot of people who are learning astrology find it very difficult to understand what's the difference between when something's in a sign and when something's in a house. And they'll confuse and say that they're the same thing. That having North Node in Sagittarius is the same thing as having North Node in the 9th house, or Mercury in the 3rd house is the same as Mercury in Gemini. But they're not. They're different. And the more that you study astrology, the more that you work with your own chart, the more that you see others work with their charts and study them, you'll get a better sense of what the difference is between these two. But just to try and explain generally, the sign of the planet or the node conveys the quality of the energy, the type of energy. Is it fixed? Is it cardinal? Is it mutable? Is it fire? Is it air? Is it water? And so on. And then the house is the area of life or of our earthly experience in which the planet is expressing itself. So people get confused sometimes if a planet is in a sign in a house that it's opposite. So you might have Mercury in Sagittarius in the 3rd house, or you might have North Node in Sagittarius in the 3rd house. And you say, well, I'm confused then. Am I supposed to be like a Sagittarius or am I supposed to be like a Gemini? I don't understand. In fact, in that instance, you would be searching to express the qualities of a Sagittarius, of that Sagittarian energy in areas ruled by the 3rd house, which is different than saying you have to be a Sagittarius and a Gemini, right? So what we learn by learning about the sign and the house of the node placement, the north node placement, is what our karmic direction is in this lifetime. So the north node is always what you're reaching for, what would bring you the karmic rewards, and the south node represents the past karma that's been completed. I was raised to believe in reincarnation. I'm an educated person. I realize logically and scientifically it makes no sense. The numbers don't add up. But those things that are taught to us in childhood, I think they just stick with us. I'll never get over that. But if the reincarnation metaphor doesn't make any sense to you, you might choose to explain this as childhood, for example. Things that worked in childhood that would be the South Node, and the North Node would be maturity. Or you can just talk about it as karma. The past karma is the South Node, and the future karma is the North Node. The South Node are the gifts and blessings that we come into this lifetime, the things that feel natural and comfortable to us, but that aren't going to work anymore. Michael Luton, my favorite astrologer, probably living now, has said that the South Node represents the energy of the thing that you would have done if you just had 5 more minutes on Earth in your last lifetime. And I know for me, that would still be true. If I knew I had 5 minutes to live, I'd probably still try to do my South Node, even though I know it wouldn't work because they never works. The South Node is the thing that's comfortable for you, but when you try to do it in this lifetime, it's just going to be pretty much a disaster every time, a crash and burn, because things are set up in this lifetime to support you in your North Node, in reaching for your North Node. It's uncomfortable. It may always feel like it's something new and different and not where you want to go. It's not natural. But when you work the North Node, you should get karmic rewards. Life should be easier. And you should feel better. You should feel better. And that's generally how you know you've got the right North Node. People sometimes say, well, I'm not sure. It's on the cusp. I'm not sure what house it's in, or I'm not sure what sign it's in. You should know, because when you work it should help you. It should work for you. So in future lectures, we'll talk about the qualities of the signs and the houses for the nodes. I have that information on my website. But this has been a brief introduction to what the nodes are and what you can learn from them. So I hope you found this useful.